Welcome to AP CSP Unit 5, Lesson 5, Building an App Clicker Game. And like the title says, by the end of this lesson, you will build your own clicker game. So on Bubble 2, there is a demo game. And so you can go ahead and see what your clicker game will involve. Of course, yours isn't going to be exactly the same, but we can go ahead and check that out. The clicker aspect of it is like the last lesson where you had the bananas that we clicked around. The difference is now we're going to have multiple screens, and we're also going to have it keep score and have it determine how many lives you have left. Or it could be different variables, but basically variables that you learn how to program. So if we run this, you'll see there's a start button here, and that'll take us to the game. It has a score and lives. And of course, as you play, the score changes and the lives change, and then there are other screens, and in this case, music, to tell you how you did. You could click try again if you want, and then you can play. If you do get to 25, there's another screen that tells you that you won. So you're not going to be making this exact apple grab game, but by the end of the lesson, you will be making your own similar clicker. So before we do that, we have some different lessons that we're going to learn some new techniques. The first one is a command called set text, which will change the text of a component on the screen given its ID. So in this case, of course, if they click on the certain arrow, then the text is going to change. So what we're going to do is we're going to modify the code on bubble 3. When the down arrow is clicked, we want to set the text of the label to something else. Okay, so you'll see what that looks like here. We're going to go ahead and run this. And then you'll see if we click the up arrow, it says up arrow. If we click the down arrow, nothing happens, okay? And so first of all, for the up arrow to say that, what it's going to do is it's going to, you're going to use a set text block. You can grab that and drag it over, or you could type it in. And you'll see for set text, first you have to have the ID of whatever it is you're changing, and then you'll add in the text that you wanted to say. So in this case, the ID is count display label, and we have it say the word up arrow when you click on the up button. So we're going to do a similar thing down here. What we want to do is we want to have the down arrow when it's clicked that it says something. So I'm going to go ahead actually and copy paste. I'm going to copy the set text. It's going to be the same ID, the count display label, but we wanted to say something different. So I'm going to go ahead and put down arrow, and that should meet the goal needs of this lesson. So here we have up and down, and there we have it. We just completed bubble number 3. And so that's how the set text works. So on bubble number 4, what they want us to do is they want us to play a little bit with a very simple app, which you can see here at the right, to demonstrate the basic concepts involved in making the clicker game. Okay, and that's going to give us practice that we need in order to make the game at the end of the lesson. Okay, so that's what we're going to do on bubble number 4. We're just going to run it and see how it works. So if you run this, you can see when I click the arrow, instead of having words in the set text, it's actually going to have a value or a number. If I hit the down arrow, it goes down. And if I hit the up arrow, it goes up. And you'll see once it hits 0, it even goes into negative. Whoa! When it got to -5, it stopped me. Let me go the other way. Start over, and I'm just going to click the up arrow until something happens. And when I got to 20, it stopped me. So anyways, basically, this is just a simple little game that will be similar to us doing some components of our clicker game. Okay, so we're going to be messing with this in the next few bubbles. So go ahead and hit finish and continue. In bubbles 5, 6, and 7, we're going to be studying code until we think we understand what's happening. And then on the next screen, we're going to have almost the same app. It has a subtle problem. Okay, and so 5 and 6 go together. You're going to have 5, and then 6 is going to be similar, but has a little issue. And then in bubble 7, you're actually going to be typing in what you think the issue was. Okay, so I'm actually going to have you do this one on your own. I'm not going to actually do this one with you, but I will show it to you real quick. The example program here has a small portion of the count up down app written. What the app should do is shown in the animation on the right. So you can see that right now it'll count up. And when you hit the up arrow and if you click the down arrow, it'll say the word down. Okay. And so, and that's what it does. And so basically all you need to do is kind of look at the code to see what it's doing and how it's doing that. And then once you're done analyzing the code on number 5 and also reading through the instructions, you're going to go hit finish and you're going to look at 6. Now 6 is a very, very similar app. There's a slight difference in the code, which I'm not going to show you where it's at because I want you to figure this out. But there's a subtle difference, and that subtle difference is causing an issue. So if I were to click on this, it says NaN, which stands for not a number. And so you're basically you need to look at the code and figure out why that's happening. When this code looks really similar to 5. So what little thing could be making the difference? Okay, and once you've analyzed that, then you're going to move on to bubble number 7 and you're going to reflect on it. You're going to basically explain what the difference was between the first version of the game, which is bubble 5, and the one with the bug, which is bubble 6. Okay, so what specifically in the code was the difference between the two, and why is that an issue, and then how did you fix it? So go ahead and respond to those 3 questions in this box here, and you'll be done with bubbles 5, 6, and 7. Now, once you finish that, you're going to jump to bubble number 8. And bubble number 8 is introducing 2 concepts that relate to what we just did. Okay, there is a difference between what's called a local variable and a global variable. A local variable is created within a function. So inside of the function, you'll have a variable that you create. And if you create a variable inside a function, you can only use it in that function. So once you move outside of that function, then that variable will not like work anymore. It doesn't really exist on the other part of the code. Whereas if you use a global variable, which typically is typed at the top of your code, a global variable can be used throughout the program. So once you create the variable, declare it, at the beginning of the code, then it can be used multiple times throughout your code. So that's the difference between a local and a global variable, and that definitely ties into what the mistake was in bubble number 6. So having said that, we're going to move on to bubble number 9, and what we're going to do is we're going to make the count go down by 1 every time the down arrow is clicked. So the up arrow is already functioning. Our job is to make the down arrow function. So since those are very similar, there's more than likely a chance that we're going to be able to copy and paste some code. So let's go ahead and compare what the two have. So we have our variable count, which is set to 0. And then we have set text on the count display label, and it's setting the text of count. So that's why it has a 0 here to start. And then on event, when we click the up button, then count is going to equal count plus 1. So each time you click on it, it goes up by 1. And then we have to set the text to display the new count, basically. Okay. So on the down button, when we click, well, we need to do the opposite. So basically, we're going to subtract 1 instead of add. So I'm going to copy that line of code. I'm going to paste it right here, and I'm going to put a minus. And hopefully that works. And we already have our set text. And, just caught something, almost didn't change it. For our set text, it's going to have the string, the word down, and obviously we don't want that anymore. We actually want it to have the variable count. So that means it'll have the actual value of the number as it goes up and down. Okay, so that's really important that you change that. So let's go ahead and run that. You see our up, of course, is working, and now we've added down. Down is working too. Awesome. So that is all you had to do in bubble number 9. Go ahead and click finish, and we'll talk about bubble 10. In bubbles 10 through 12, we're actually going to look at the code and we're going to fix different issues, different bugs in the code. So let's jump in and check those out. This bug has a program that doesn't produce an error. It just doesn't do what's expected. The reason is a common mistake that all programmers make. So let's go ahead and run the program. And let's click the arrow up about 5 times. And now it says click the down arrow about 10 times. And nothing happened, right? But now if I click the up arrow, it's at -1. So what's happening is it is going down. So let's say I have it at 10 and I click it down 10 times. And now when I click it up, it's going to be 1 because it went down to 0. Well, the problem is it's not showing it, but it is actually subtracting. So we have to figure out why it's not showing it. So let's compare these two. So on the up button, we have the count going up. On the down button, we have the count going down. Well, here's the big issue right here. The set text is not set on the down button. So we're going to have to copy the set text code. So basically it's happening, but it's not showing the count. So that should solve our problem. So let's reset it. Let's run it. Go up and we go down. Problem solved, finished with bubble 10. Okay. On bubble 11, again, another bug. This one has a few different bugs that are related to the same problem. So let's go ahead and run the program. And it says to click the up arrow several times. Oh, it only went up once. It didn't go up more than once. And then when I click down, I got a mistake. It says, oops, we can't figure out what count is. Perhaps you meant the string count with quotes. If this is meant to be a variable, make sure you declared a variable var count. Okay, cool. So let's check this out. So right away, I do see an issue. Well, it's not really an issue. It would work as a capital letter, but I definitely always want to do my variables or my code in lowercase or camel case. So I'm going to make that lowercase, my variable. And then on event, the up button is clicked. Var count equals count plus 1. Well, there's a big major issue. By you already have the variable count. You already declared it at the top, the global variable, and now you're declaring it inside the function, which would be a local variable. So therefore, what's happening, oh, that makes sense. What's happening is when you push it, it does work once because well, it will. The problem is I changed the capital letter. It would work once, but only once because then it goes outside of the function and it never works again. That makes sense. So let's, well, first of all, get rid of the var because we don't need to declare the variable inside the function. We want it to be a global variable so we can use it in both places, right, in different places. And then, of course, this one's uppercase, and I change it to lower. So I think my up arrow is probably fixed. Go ahead and run it. Awesome. And then on my down arrow, looks like it's all lowercase and there's no var, so my down should actually work already. Yep, perfect. So I had to remove the var in front of count equals count plus 1, and then I had varying cases. I had upper and lower going on, and they all need to be consistently the same. So those were the bugs in bubble number 11. Okay, let's move on to bubble number 12. This program has a few different bugs. Find them and squash them. Okay. So let's go ahead and run. And it says click the up arrow exactly twice. Interesting. So it didn't go up, did it? Let's do it again. Set, run, 1, 2. It's weird. It goes down like once or something. Like it goes down, first of all. Oh, okay, it keeps going down. It goes down with our up arrow. Let's see what happens with the down arrow. And it goes up with our down arrow. So first of all, those are flip-flops, so that's an issue. And then I do feel like it doesn't, like the first time I click it, nothing happens. Like I clicked it once, nothing happens. Twice, something happens. So there's a couple things going on there. So let's start from the top. Var count equals 0. That looks good. On event, if the up button is clicked, our function would set the text of the count display label to count. That sounds good. And then count would equal count plus 1. So there's our first mistake. Okay. And then on event for the down button, if we click, the function will do count equals count plus 1. Well, when it's down, we want it to go minus 1. And then it says set text count display label count. And all the counts are the same case. So I think that was the only issue was the plus and the minus. But let's go ahead and reset that. And let's click. Okay, it is working. But the first time I click it, it doesn't work. Oh, I just realized why. Because what's happening is you have to actually set the text after you add it or subtract it. Okay, that's the problem. So we're going to set the text afterward. We want it to change. Awesome. So we ended up changing three things. We ended up changing the plus to a minus down here, and we changed the minus to a plus up here, and then we had to change the order of the count and the set text after the count. So that solved all the bugs in Bubble 12. So let's hit finish, and let's keep moving. Bubble number 13, it says add code to update the score when the apple is clicked. So they have their little apple game, and we're going to have to make the score work. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and add the code for the score. So basically, we're going to have the score equal to score plus 1 each time it's clicked. So that's one thing we need. Let's go ahead and run that. Click on it. So my score is going up, but the label, like the actual text, isn't changing. So I need to set the text. Okay, so I'm going to grab a set text block, and I'll go ahead and put it here. And I want to set the text of the, well, I don't know what it's called. So I'm going to have to go over here to design mode, and I'm going to come over here to score. And this is called the score label. I guess I could have figured it out with the drop down, but you know, whatever, better safe than sorry. So, and if I go to show blocks, you'll see what I mean by the drop down. If I click over here and I hit the drop down, then it gives me all of my labels. And so the score label is the one I want to change. I don't want it to have text in there. I actually want it to have the variable score so that as it changes, it goes up and down. It's showing the text on the screen right here. So let's go ahead and run that and see if I solve that issue. So I'm going to click on the apple. Yep, now I have 1 and I have 2 and so on. Awesome. So we are done with bubble number 13. Excellent. So let's hit finish. And let's head to bubble 14. In bubble 14, what they're going to have us do in the game, the number of lives starts at 3 and decrements, which means it goes down by 1 every time the background image is clicked. So we're going to add this functionality to our game. Okay. So we've got our on event, our apple click. Okay, so we don't have anything at this point, so we're going to have to do all of the work for this one. So the first thing we need to do is we need to have a variable for lives, okay? So we can go ahead and grab var x, and we're going to put var lives equals 3. So we want to start with 3 lives. And then we need an on event, okay? So we're going to go to UI controls, and we're going to grab an on event block. And we want the on event, when we click this background right here, we want stuff to happen. So I need to make sure what that's called. So if I come over here and I click on this picture of the apple, it looks like the ID is literally called background. That was a good guess. Okay, so where it says ID, I'm going to type in the word background, because that's the ID for the apple picture. And when we click, we want a couple things to happen. So first of all, we want the lives to go down. So we want lives to be equal to lives minus 1. Okay, so it goes down by 1 each time they click on the screen. And then we want the text to change. So we want to set the text. And let's see, we want to set the text of the, it must be the lives label. Okay, and it did help me figure it out. If I wanted to, I could go to design mode and make sure, but I know that that's it. And then I'm going to put my comma, and I'm going to go ahead and put lives because we want the actual lives variable to be changing in the lives label. Okay, so these 3 lines of code as well as the variable lives equals 3 should be what we need to make the lives go down. So let's click on the apple. Scores going up when I click on the apple, and then, oops, I missed it. Yep, lives went down. Okay, scores going up, lives going down. Perfect. So that is the end of bubble number 14. Let's keep moving to 15. So in 15, we're going to actually add an if statement to the event handler. So basically, if at this point, it's just going to keep counting forever. It's going to count up forever. It's going to count down the lives forever. We have nothing saying like, hey, if we get to a certain point, you win, or hey, if we get to a certain point, you lose. So we're going to add an if statement. Now, Don't worry, we're going to have a lot more practice with if statements later on in a different unit, but for this lesson, we're just going to keep it real simple. So you'll see what it says. It says if the count is equal to 20, then they're going to set the screen to a game over screen. So we're going to do something similar to that in bubble 15. Excuse me, in bubble 16. So in 16, we're going to add an if statement so that when counting down, the app changes screen when the count reaches -5. So you'll notice that they already put in some code for the count up. So they said if count equals 20, when they're clicking and it's going up, then they want to set to the screen to the game over screen and set the text of the final score label to count. Okay, so in our case, it's going to be very similar, but they want us to do this bottom piece. Okay, so we're going to add an if statement. We're going to add an if statement after these 2 lines of code. And so I just copied and pasted just to kind of make my life easier. In this case, if the count is equal to -5, then we want to set the screen to the game over screen, and we want to set the text to the final score label to count. So I think that should actually work. The only thing you had to change was the -5 because we're going down. So let's go ahead and check that out. Let's hit run, and if we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yep, it says, wow, you counted to -5. Okay, so let's hit finish. That was bubble number 16. On bubble 17, we're going to add code to the Start Over button event handler to reset the app. In most apps, you want to provide a way to start over, and to do this without having the user quit or restart your app, you need to add code to reset the variables and text displays to initial value so the app can effectively start over. So go back to the beginning. So we've added a button to the game over screen in the count up down app and added an empty event handler for it. Right now, clicking the start over button does nothing. So if I were to come here and go down, right now this does nothing. So what we need to do is add code to the start over button event handler to reset the app. So let's scroll down to that, and here's our on event they're talking about. The app should work like the animation shown to the right. Notice that when the start over button is clicked, it goes back to the main screen and the count has been reset to 0. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is we need to set the screen to the gameplay screen. So let's grab a set screen. So I'm going to go over to show blocks, so it kind of gives me a little help here. Hit the down arrow, we've got our gameplay screen. So that's our first step. Okay, we want to set the count variable to 0. Okay, so let's head back to text view. I just prefer it that way. So we're going to go count gets the value of 0 when the start over button is clicked, and then we also need to set text on the text label on the gameplay screen to show that the count is 0. Okay, so on this screen, this needs to be a 0. And if we don't reset that, it won't have a 0. It'll have the number from before. So we're going to set the text. And I'm going to go ahead and check out what this thing is called. It's called the count display label. I think I might have just said that out loud from the instructions, but I forgot already. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to hit the down arrow. Excuse me. There we go. To the count display label. And we want to set that to count, the actual variable, which would of course be 0, hopefully. So let's hope I did everything right. I am not even sure. So let's go ahead and run that. And we're going to go down, just it's faster to go down to 5 than it is to go up to 20. And then we're going to hit start over. I think it worked. It's 0, and it's still working. Awesome. If we were to go up, same thing should happen. Yes, the screens work. Excellent. So we would have to change the screen back to the gameplay screen, change the value of the variable back to 0, and then make sure to set the text right in here to the variable. Awesome. So that's bubble number 17. In bubble 18, we're going to 18, 19, and 20. We're going to be running the program and trying to find the bugs. So let's head over there and try that. So the count up down app has a bug. A very common mistake has been introduced into the code. It's one that vexes early programmers, but we are sure you'll find it. Coding.code.org. So let's go ahead and run it and see what's going on. So let's hit run and let's go up. Whoa, it goes straight to 20. I didn't realize that's what it did. Down, it goes straight to -5. Okay. So let's just click it once. Wow. Okay. So let's go ahead and see what's going on. Um, it says bar count is 0. And then when the up button is clicked, count will be equal to count plus 1. That looks good. And we're going to change the text to count display label count, which is good. And it says if count gets the variable of 20, then we want to set the game over screen and set the text to count. Well, I see one mistake already because this should be a double equal sign. So I think that is the issue because we're not changing the value of the variable. We're actually having equality here, and equality is a double equal. So I think that's the issue. And yep, it looks like they both have that going on. So let's just go back to show text. Let's throw in an equal sign. And I didn't even pay attention, but it does also have the yellow little flag over there on the left. That should have helped me out. And if we hit equal, then that means something different than this. This would be like, hey, we're going to change the value of the variable to 20. But that's not what we want. We want to say, if it's 20, then do this stuff. So that's why it wasn't working properly. So now, yeah, so now it won't work until we get to 20. And before, we were basically like saying, hey, change it to 20. Cool. So that was a little tricky. It was a small little thing, but made a big, big difference to the game. Okay. So remember, single equals is basically giving a value to a variable, but the double equals means equality. It means equals like we're used to. Okay. Let's see what the bug is in number 19. The count up down app has a bug again. A common mistake has been introduced into the code. It's a tricky one to find because at first it looks like everything is okay. So let's see. So let's run the program. It says click the up or down arrow until you get the game over. Wow, you counted to 20. Start over. Okay. Down. Oh. So now it went from 20 and then it started going down. So let's reset that. Okay, 1. And now if I go down, it looks good. Okay, and when I start over, oh, it starts from the value before. It doesn't like reset the value to 0 when the ending, like when the start over button happens. So the issue has to be in the start over button thing. So we're going to have to scroll down to what we did in an earlier lesson where we programmed our start over button. And when we click, it says to set the text to 0 and the screen to the gameplay screen. But if you remember, we also changed the value of the variable to 0. So I'm pretty sure in here we have to make the count variable back to 0 for that to work properly. I think that's what the bug is. Let's see. 5, and then start over, and then 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So that was the issue because like they had left out that line of code. So now if we do it, yeah, it started from 0. So this line of code was missing because when they click the restart button or the start over button, you have to change the variable back to 0. You can't just change the number to 0. The actual variable has to be 0 as well. So they were missing that line of code. So let's check out this last bug on bubble number 20. The count up down app has a bug again. We've changed the app so it counts up and down by 3 rather than by 1. Okay, so let's check that out. Run, click the up or down arrow, trying to get to the game over screen. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21. Okay, I can see what's wrong already. And then this guy, 3, -3, -6. So we're never going to get the screen because the Game over screen happens when it's equal to 20 or when it's equal to -5. Well, if you're counting up by 3, it's never going to be equal to 20 because 20 is not a multiple of 3. 21 would be. So what we could do is we could just say if it's greater than or equal to 20, or it's less than or equal to 5. Okay, so instead of saying it has to be exactly equal to those values, we can make these greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, and that should solve the bug. So now when we get to 20, oh, start. Oh, wait, my bad. Now when we get to 21, it will do it. And then this one will go 3 and it should do it right away. Yeah. Okay, cool. So we solved that problem. So let's hit finish. Let's head to the last two bubbles. And basically, what you're going to be doing in 21, this is where you're going to create your own clicker game. Okay, make sure you look at the requirements. You do have to have 4 screens. You have a welcome screen, the actual clicker game, and then a screen for if they win or they lose. Okay, and so you're going to need to read through the instructions to create your own clicker game. This will be graded on the rubric, and I will leave you to that, okay? And then when you're done, there is one AP practice response question about abstraction and one of the prompts that is going to be part of your create task. And so you're definitely going to want to take time to go through and read it and respond, and we will be talking about that further later in the week. So that will end Unit 5, Lesson 5. Thanks for watching.